We are live. This is Pitchdeck Asia. We are in the Singapore studio, Asia Tech Podcast. My name is Graham Brown, joined by the two co-founders of Absolute, Mannan Pacha and Vardhan Sharma. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Graham.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
So we're going to talk about Absolute. We're going to talk about your journey coming from India to Singapore, the problem that you are solving. And I know you've got a few shout-outs as well. We'll do those in a minute. Hold fire on those, Mannan. So let me ask first. You guys came from Antler. What was the story there? Because obviously we know Antler very well. You've had a
So we are
relationship with
currently in
those
the Antler cohort.
Yeah.
And we essentially started the current program. It started on the 21st of January.
Yeah.
Me and Harsh have pretty much just known each other since then.
Oh, you met at the...
Yeah,
Antler.
we met each other at Antler.
Okay, at the... What sort of point in your journey did you meet? Because I know they do a lot of sort of... they place a lot of focus on co-founders meeting on the program, right?
Right. So
With
we are
yourselves? How did that
on
work?
day one. Basically, we had introduction. So I heard about Harsh and Harsh heard about me.
Right.
And then we are both smokers.
Okay.
So then that's where the real networking happened.
It was a marriage made in heaven. So you didn't know each other before the program?
No.
All right.
No.
Okay. So obviously I want to know a little bit about your backgrounds as well, because I guess one of you is probably more technical, probably one of you is more sort of front-facing and so on. But before we go there, the shout-outs. Let's get them out of the way, Mannan. So
All right.
who do you want to shout out to?
So
And by the way, if you're one of the people that Mannan or Harsh is shouting out to, then please let us know in the comments or like this video as well. So go ahead.
Absolutely. So first shout out goes to Beyond from Antler. Beyond, you're great. Challenge accepted and delivered.
All right.
And the second one is to one of my dearest friend, Mr. Dhruv Luthra. And I would like to say sorry, live here. And Dhruv, I am really sorry. Let's get back to work.
All right. Okay. There you go.
Absolutely.
Is that off your chest?
Yes,
you done?
off my chest. Yes.
So was it Bjorn that got you here? Was he the one that said you've got to come?
No, actually. I saw you, one of your videos, I think one of your AMAs or something, I can't recall which one. And then I reached out to you on LinkedIn and asked, hey, what's all this about?
Okay.
And then the story continued from there.
Awesome. Good for you. All right. Little bit of background first. You're both from India, different parts of India.
Yeah.
Harsh, yourself from?
I'm from western parts of India,
Yeah.
Rajasthan. And earlier I was working in the capital region in the Gurgaon for a tech startup, for a fintech startup. And then I basically came here for this program.
Okay.
So I was invited here by Antler. And I came up with a very open mindset to discuss more ideas. And now we are here.
Right. How does Antler invite you? You must have been on their radar beforehand. Was there sort of
Yeah,
an outreach program or something?
Yeah, I actually got some sort of invite from them, and I actually didn't have any idea about Antler earlier.
Yeah.
So then I looked up into them, and it really interested me.
Yeah. Okay. So had you been to Singapore before?
No, this is my
All
first
right.
time.
So this was a bit of a risk and an adventure for you as well.
Exactly.
Good for you. You made the move. Mannan, yourself, what was the story?
So my story is I was actually, post working in the corporate world, got a bit of disgruntlement in me, wanted to go do something different. And my idea of different was that let me just go and do an MBA. So that'll give me a break I need, and then I'll figure out what to do. So I was trying to apply for INSEAD. Along the way, when I was trying to apply, people told me that, hey, you know what? Antler is something very close to INSEAD. If you have Antler on your resume, INSEAD is going to accept you faster. So I said, okay, fine, no problem. Let me go and figure that out. So I went and applied to Antler.
Right. And you haven't been to INSEAD yet?
No.
That's part of the plan?
My application process is ongoing. I don't know if they're going to take me anymore, but
Right.
yeah, that's where I'm at.
It's an option now rather than
Absolutely.
a destination.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It was always an option. It was never
Yeah.
the destination, but
Yeah.
it was a means to an end. Now the means have probably changed.
Yeah, that's how it works, right? Okay. We're going to talk about Absolute. And this is the startup that you are building currently.
Yes.
So was this conceived in Antler? Did it exist beforehand? When did the company actually exist or get born, so to speak?
So in terms of the company's genesis, yes, we
Right.
incorporated after we came into Antler. And so when we first met, me and Harsh, the first couple of weeks, maybe 10 days or so, we started talking and I liked what he was building. And I asked him that, why are you building all this? Like, what's the end game to this?
Right.
And he was like, yeah, we can do this and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, who's buying all this? And then we kind of massaged this entire place. So clearly he's the tech and he's the hacker and I'm the hustler on that one.
Yeah.
So
we both agree on those definitions.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Completely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
We don't have a hipster. So, hey, a shout out if any hipster out there.
You don't need one in this setup.
So basically it kind of reached a place where I started giving him ideas that, hey, we can put this here and we can do this and we can do this. And I come from a P&G background, so I've worked with FMCG, P&G, Estee Lauder, done a decent amount of corporate work. And me being me, I kind of went outside of my job scope and kind of have a broader exposure. So I was in supply chain and P&G. But I do have a decent understanding of what's marketing all about. I have a decent understanding of what sales cycles are all about and all of those things. So I was like, hey, you know what? Your solution is great and it can solve a whole lot of problems. But we aren't approaching this right. So let's see, what we can do. And then Harsh kind of, agreed to it as well, that let's go and see where all we can apply this.
So at that point, were you just building this on your own?
Yeah, so I had one more co-founder with me back in India. So currently he's working there only. So yeah, but then like the interest faded and I was just working with my regular job, and then this opportunity came up.
Right.
And then I started discussing this idea with other people in cohort, and that's when Mannan got really interested into it, and he started throwing all sorts of idea onto me, and I was like, yeah, that's
good.
That's
well, I want to find out a bit more about your sort of working relationship as well. It's quite new as well. I mean, we're 2 or 3 months as a working relationship, so it's been a journey as well for you. And any partner, investor, or potential hire as well would be interested in that dynamic and how that works out, right? The sort of core, the DNA of the organization, right? Yeah. Let's talk about Absolute, and maybe if we can load up the pitch deck and have a look at that, and we'll just talk off the first few slides if we can. So you're making trust tangible, as it says here. Where are we going with this? Help me understand. What does that mean?
Right. So let me take a bit of a philosophical approach to this, right? Humanity, I mean, the way we are today as a species, as a race, as a mankind, what do we really need to survive? The one thing that you're at rock bottom, what do you need? You need hope. I mean, that's what my story is, that I need hope, that it's going to get better from here. Tomorrow's going to be a better day. The next week is going to be a better week, and so on and so forth. So hope is great, right? It makes you feel good. It makes you feel comfortable. So people who feel deeply, hope is enough, right? Because that feeling is good enough and it gets them through. But I'm a thinker. Personally, I'm a thinker, right? So I challenge that hope all the time. I don't have trust in that hope. Well, you just say that tomorrow's going to be a better day. What makes me believe and makes me trust that tomorrow's going to be a better day? And that's what we are trying to address, that we are going to make trust tangible.
Trust tangible. So
that's where the making trust tangible comes in.
Well, let's dive into that, because there's a solution behind that, obviously. I want to look at what the problem is first. But before we go there, what is the market that you're operating in? How do you define yourself by the market that you're in?
So right now, it's too broad and it's 3 months, so it's too early to say. But in the first month of Antler, they basically asked us and they coached us and guided us that, hey, you guys need a lot of validation. So one thing which one of the mentors at Antler mentioned is that go and speak to at least 200 people to go and understand try and bounce around your problem and your solution and see if it sticks. So I kind of went manic on that, right? Literally.
How? So describe, because how you did that is really insightful for an investor.
I was literally having 8 calls a day with people all over the world.
Right.
So I don't know if there's a slide on that, but yeah, the last slide, I think, that where do our friends and family kind of come from?
Yeah, okay.
If you want to flick through. One.
Yeah, right there.
The one about the one.
It's fourth one.
Fourth one.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So I literally went and connected with every single, literally CXO level person I knew, and fortunately I know a few people. And I was like, let's get into a 15-minute call, right? Let me help me understand, how do you build trust in your industry?
Yeah.
So I was in call with Toulouse, Airbus. I was in calls with higher people in Delphi. I was in calls with management at Woolworths, with board of directors at StarHub, all of these guys. And they're like, yeah, we kind of relate to the problem. The problem is great. We don't know how you're going to solve it. We don't know how anybody can solve it. But if you manage to solve it, I'm sure people are going to buy it. I don't know.
What was that problem then?
The trust part, right?
Right, but let's sort of kind of drill down on that picture.
Right, so let's say if I talk about FMCG in particular, right? So let me talk about, I won't name brands here, but based on my experience, you can kind of guess the brands. So how they are basically worried about counterfeits. They are worried about when a consumer actually walks into the store and tries to buy their product, They want to make sure that it's coming. The provenance of the product can be proven correctly.
Yeah.
Every stakeholder in the middle of their defined regulated supply chain is correctly being, all of their needs are met. So there are no parallel imports and gray market and all of those kind of things. And at the consumer level, who is basically being served by that product, especially if it's a category of in my body, on my body kind of a product, then definitely they want to make sure that to give that entire end-to-end transparency.
Okay. So you listened to these conversations, or you took part in these conversations with 200 people?
I haven't reached my 200 mark yet. I actually went a step further. I said I don't want to do 200. I want to do 300.
Right.
My Excel sheet still says I am 20% short of that.
All right. That's good going.
So
You've
far, so
hustled.
good.
That's your
Yes.
hustle deck,
That's
right?
my hustle.
Yeah, we did a, I don't know if it's the one that you were talking about, the AMA with 2 angel investors. Rena Neo, one of the angel investors, who'll be there on the 20th as well. She was saying, what's more interesting to me is somebody who puts on their pitch deck a slide of who they've hustled, who they've had conversations with, to those 200, 300 people, rather than, the 30 under 30 or whatever it may be that you won. Or
Right.
Exactly.
That is more of a validation for
That's
investing.
perfect, right? So I would really like to talk to Rena.
Excellent. I'm sure likewise. You're actually taking on the advice and activating it, right?
So, just to give a very tangible example to my hustle. So I remember this in the first 10, 12 days, we used to spend a lot of time together. And 2 a.m. at night, I'm at his house. He stays at Dunman Road and I stay at Badok. And about 2:30, I call for a go check, right, to go back home.
Yeah.
So the driver is a lady driver, and I'm kind of surprised at 2:30 in the morning. I have a female driver, but I start talking, right? Me being me, and I asked her, so what do you do, like, in the day job? And she's like, I'm a stationery shop owner. And I'm like, okay, what stationery shop is this? And it's a pretty nice local brand. And I was like, okay, so how do you reach to your customers? And then she told me all sorts of her problems. And I'm like, okay, so how do you design like your next best stationery, like a notebook? So how do you choose which cover to use? And she's like, yeah, focus groups and all that, but they are too expensive, so we seldom do that. So if you can give me a cheaper solution to that, we'll take it. And I'm like, yeah, I've got a built solution. Like, let's meet for a coffee next week and go do it.
Right.
I wrote an email to her. She hasn't gotten back to me yet, but we have a solution ready for her. So
Yeah.
that's my hustle, which I immediately, the two of us kind of converted into a product. So next time I meet a stationery shop, I'm not going to ask for a problem. I'm like, here's the solution.
There you go. You're ready to go. Okay. Well, let's talk about the problem and the solution so we can, help identify exactly what this is. If you go into the pitch deck, if we can jump forward, slide 5, you've actually identified some of the problems here. For those people who are not watching on video, maybe just listening on audio, maybe you can just be a bit descriptive about what's here. So the problems that we care about, and then we're going to jump in and have a look at the solutions as well. So what does it say on this slide here?
So businesses essentially face challenges while, marketing their branding. And recently I attended an event called Brands for Good. It's an initiative supported by Maybank. And there I learned something really cool, right? So one of these marketing gurus, he comes up and he says, what is really marketing and what is branding? And what exactly is it supposed to do? So let's take an example of a nail, a hammer, and the surface in which you hammer that nail. So the surface in which you hammer that nail is essentially the customer's mind. The nail is your brand, right? The idea that you are different. You're going to solve something. You're going to do something differently. And the hammer is your marketing. So the harder you market yourself, the better you market yourself, the better your nail is going to be driven. So we kind of said, okay, we're going to build a new hammer, right? So because today's hammers are all broken. Today's hammers would be like print media, digital media, social media, and all of them have problems. So we said we're going to go and do something differently and help these brands market themselves better. And that's essentially what our solution does.
Okay. What is that?
So we'll go that on the next slide.
Yep.
But just the other problem which I've mentioned over there is in terms of businesses facing issues with counterfeiting. So this is, again, counterfeits are a massive problem, of course, for normal products. Like if you're paying for a real Adidas shoe, you want to make sure you get a real Adidas shoe. Two months later,
Yep.
You don't want to know that it's a fake and feel shortchanged. And that feeling of shortchange is something which will make you never buy that Adidas again. So that is something which we're trying to avoid. Of course, in the case of shoes and clothes, it may not be a life and death situation, but in the case of pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
in the
For
case
sure.
of food,
Especially here in Asia.
yeah. So it becomes a life and death situation, and that's what we are essentially helping target.
Okay. So the solution is?
Yeah. So the solution is essentially a completely new way to create a digital touch point between any product which you are holding in your hand and connecting you directly to the most trustworthy source, which is the maker of the brand.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I create a digital touch point where you go ahead and basically can interact with the product, and the product allows you to connect securely to the maker of the brand. And then the maker tells you that, hey, these are the realities of my product.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any questions, directly talk to me and I will sort them out. Then you don't need any of the noise of the social media. Then you don't need to spend so much as print media, which is not even targeted. Then you don't need to direct traffic to your website, because these guys are completely involved with your product at the time when they are being involved, either in the store when they are purchasing it or when they actually have the product in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially that's the solution.
So let's say I have a Louis Vuitton handbag,
Right.
as an example. I'm a consumer. I'm going to buy this. How does this then work? Is it an on-bag RFID code or something like QR code?
Exactly.
Explain to me the technicalities of this.
Right. So from a technical standpoint, it could be any of those things, right? RFID, QR, near-field communication,
Right.
any of those. And we are now creating the back-end scalable solution that today Louis Vuitton comes in, ready to go. Hermes comes in, ready to go.
Right.
Xenia comes in, ready to go. So that's the
So
way we are
what is it
doing
likely to be? I'm just trying to...
So there is a slide on that, I think.
Yeah, I
if you
think
can
the
just go
key
there.
here is to try to picture this in people's minds, because we're talking conceptually. The more that we can sort of show people this is the actual application, even though there are many potential channels here.
Absolutely. So we've got a slide on that.
Yeah. So okay.
Basically, it's a phone app.
Yeah.
So it could be a shape of anything. We are just working on an app right now. And then that connects using QR or NFC technology to any of these products. And then it securely connects you back to the back end, which is a trusted destination, which is controlled only by the brand owner and the maker of the products.
How do I know it's controlled by the brand owner?
So that's the authenticity that we build. And of course, we are playing with how do we kind of safeguard those things. So you're right on raising that question.
Yeah, because it may be a fake
absolutely,
shopfront, if you like.
Absolutely. So we are we will the challenge that we are at now is building ourselves to be seen as credible ourselves. So we kind of become the gold standard of credibility.
Right. Okay. So let's review. Effectively, you've identified the problem of trust, and we're talking about counterfeit, for example, as one area, because obviously that is a huge revenue leakage and a brand issue for many CPG or even pharmaceutical brands, F&B brands, and so on. So there's a real issue there. They're losing money. It's impacting their brand negatively.
So this particular problem of counterfeit, it has a threefold effect.
Okay.
So first one is the consumer, because he's being shortchanged. He or she is being shortchanged. Second one is the brand. They are losing out on their trust. And the third one is the government, because they are losing out on their taxes.
Tax, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe even environment in some issues.
Exactly, yeah. It could be anything.
Okay.
And if, let's say, if it is a particular case of pharmaceutical, it is directly affecting your health.
Right, yeah.
Like it could endanger your life.
Can we then, just as an example, because I think the key with such an early stage startup is to paint pictures in people's minds that this is where it could be used on a day-to-day basis, even though the platform is not fully ready yet. Let's sort of give people an idea of what's to come so they can get on board with it, because you live in this world, right? But everybody you're talking to doesn't, so they're sort of getting a diluted version of what's going on in your conversations on a day-to-day. So we talked about, for example, pharmaceutical. So in that case, you'd put, like, for example, a QR code on a medicine pack, and somebody can actually verify these are real. Yeah, because there's a big issue. I mean, not so much in the developed world, but in the developing world, there's a real issue, right? With fake pharmaceuticals. In India has a real issue, and Africa as well, right? So there's one. Where else could Louis Vuitton handbags, for example? Yeah,
so and it doesn't stop with that, right? So with Louis Vuitton, then the next stage to it is also the second-hand economy, because typically you buy a Louis Vuitton, you buy it for like 15, 20, 100,000. I don't know what the number is. But then after 3 months, you want to change it. You want to sell it off second-hand to someone. Yeah. And you got to again prove the authenticity. Now you as Graham may not be able to prove that authenticity. So how do you do it? Okay, it comes with, this is the original chip or whatever, the NFC or a QR or whatever on it. And then basically this is real. In fact, I was just on a Chopard showroom just yesterday. And I was talking to the watch, the lady, the salesman, and I think I kind of troubled her, so I need to apologize to her as well. But so I went in with a friend who bought a $40,000 watch, right? And he had gone there to service something, and he got a replacement for it. And the watch came with a piece of paper, which seemed to be a certificate of authenticity. And I was like, hey, you know what? This watch is worth $40,000. I could reverse engineer this piece of paper for 5,000, right? So it is protecting something worth a lot more than the cost of reverse engineering that paper. How are you protecting me? I don't believe this. This is toilet paper.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody can fake a watch, they can fake
Exactly,
a
right? I mean, how difficult?
The certificate's a lot less complicated than the mechanics of a watch, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I was like, you're protecting something and telling me to believe your protection, which is basically protecting something of higher value, where so much of effort and value hasn't gone into the protective layers itself. So how do you kind of make this happen? So she kind of got pissed off at me, but hey, I kind of validated the problem.
Okay. Very good. Pharmaceutical, luxury.
So anything, like even spare parts. So we spoke to
cosmetics, yeah. How would it work in, for example, F&B, so food? So there's a real issue with provenance of food here in Asia as well. Obviously, China's had there's many horror stories of fake foods, obviously, but also food sourced from, the wrong sources with the wrong chemicals.
The wrong sources, wrong chemicals, even fair trade, whole lot of things, problems.
Fake organic,
that stuff, all of that, right? So now, basically, of course, it's not an immediate solution that we can build, but the way to look at it would be that all of the answers to these questions, if you have them right, can be digitized and basically put into a secure location and can be made accessible to someone who wants to access them. So, I mean, going back to other verticals, automation, automobiles, aviation. I kind of had a word with the ex-CEO of Auto Bavaria, and he was like, yeah, what you guys are doing is pretty cool. We face this problem on a daily basis.
Yep.
What about the spare parts? So he gave me this interesting term saying, so spare parts are of different types. One is it comes from the manufacturer, which is expensive and good quality, nothing to be worried about. The second type is basically the OEMs. So the OEMs kind of build the spare parts and sell it, but they don't have to pay the licensing fee anymore, so they are cheaper, but they're good enough. And the last category is the scary one, because they are known as will-fit parts. So you go to a cheap mechanic, and he says, okay, this will fit, just go ahead and put it in, but then your car breaks down on the causeway. So how do you help make sure, and sometimes the scrupulous mechanics can go ahead and sell a will-fit part as an OEM and create make a quick buck, but then it causes trouble for you.
Absolutely. I've even heard of people taking cars in for exchange or to get fit, and they'll actually take out parts and replace them with counterfeits. Right. That exists, right? Another area as well, I'm a cyclist.
Yes,
this is a huge area.
Exactly. So I used to cycle as well.
Yeah.
I own a bike which has a Shimano with Tiagra as well, and it has the same concerns. I mean, when I go and work on service my gears, how do I know if something's real or not?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. So we've identified potential verticals for this, and I'm sure there's a lot more. How do you make money out of this? Where's the revenue model in this?
All right.
So revenue model right now, the way we are looking at it, and this is very, very fluid, right? So right now on an immediate basis, we are not looking at making a quick buck. This is a long-term thing for us. So we haven't really looked at it at every single moment that we can make money. But at a top line, being able to, give a solution to a brand who can then go ahead and prove all of this authenticity is basically enough for us to make money from. Going forward, there are other ways to do, like the QR codes or the NFC chips or whatever. We can go, and since we own that part of it, so we could make up something on that as well. So there is a SaaS subscription model which we can work out with the brands that, hey, to be part of the ecosystem and continue using us, you got to pay us this subscription fee on a monthly basis. So those are the various revenue fields that we have looked at.
Okay, and how do you get the end users, the consumers using this? Because that's going to be a challenge, isn't it? Because they can pay as a SaaS model to implement this, but you have to have a consumer at the other end who's willing to use it. Right?
Absolutely. And that's where it would be a shared responsibility between us and the brands. So some brands already have a whole lot of assets. So like one of the pilots that we are doing right now with a fashion designer in India, she has a beautiful story to tell. She makes all of her products the right way. There is a lot, and her products are basically, her clothing and everything is made by rural population. So there is a lot of employment that she's creating. And every piece that she creates and every piece that she sells, there is a story to tell. So, and there is content available for all of this. So, and she's already trying to share that content using the ineffective mediums of today, which she's already agreed that these are ineffective. You know, what you're giving me is going to be a lot more efficient and a lot more effective. So now she's sharing the responsibility with us that, hey, you know, just give me this platform. I will market it to the people who are getting involved with my clothes or my products. And I'll tell them, hey, you know what, you want to know more? Just use your phone in this manner. And we've got some engagement from the consumers there. On an ongoing basis, I really don't know how to become an app which is as downloaded as, let's say, WhatsApp or Facebook. I don't have an answer for that yet. But that's essentially the guidance that we are looking for.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe you can use WhatsApp or Facebook.
Yes, we could. We could. Absolutely.
It's an option, isn't it? Rather than build your own platform.
Absolutely. So I don't believe in reinventing the wheel.
Sure. So going back to your fashion designer, you've mentioned that in this instance, it's not just about the provenance aspect and trust, but you're also adding in extra content. She can then say, for example, if you want to know about the people who actually made this object, then you know you can learn about their backstory. So you're creating a portal to
absolutely,
you know, consumers who are really into products and they really like this stuff. They want to know about the backstory. For them, they want to be part of that
absolutely.
story, right?
And especially the millennial generation of today, right? I mean, personally, I look at my own shopping habits. I'm an extremely, extremely value conscious shopper. When I buy something, I used to be in the corporate world, so I wouldn't say that I don't make money. I made money. But when I spent that money, I was extremely, extremely cautious on how I'm spending it. Why am I paying $1,000 for that pair of shoes?
Yeah.
I have $1,000 to pay for the shoes. That's not the problem. But I really need to understand why am I paying the $1,000. So if the brand can convince me that, hey, this is why you're paying the $1,000, I'm willing to pay for it.
Could you also, I'm just wondering, like with food, one of the aspects is if you're value conscious, there's another aspect of being health conscious as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Some people want to find out about organic, or they want to find out the ingredients. Is it GMO?
Absolutely.
Is it, for example, does it contain allergens? Not all packaging has that, or if it does, it's becoming more and more complicated, isn't it? The packaging, like now, there used to be a time when you just put it contains dairy, but now it has to have like 20 different allergens on there.
And on top of this, all this is like written in a really, really small font.
Yeah, and if you're my age and you've got children and you're struggling to see,
absolutely,
I'm serious.
You're completely right. And I mean, recently the European Union went ahead and made some directives as to what is all the information that needs to be printed on a cigarette carton.
Yeah.
And if I were to go ahead and say that by 2022, if they are to follow the letter of the law and put in all that information, either the carton has to that pack has to become 3 or 4 times its size, or the font needs a magnifying glass.
Right.
Right. Or so basically, cigarettes will then come with a free magnifying glass.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just pointless.
Yeah.
So we are essentially helping all of those people as well.
There is a bottleneck there in consumer packaging, isn't it? That consumer packaging over time is only going to get smaller in theory or less. It's not going to get bigger.
Right.
Yet the information that brands want to put on a package is going to increase because consumers like yourselves, you say you're value conscious, will demand more, right? You know, there was a time when there weren't any ingredients. Now we want ingredients. Now we want allergens. Now we want nutritional information. Right. And where does it go from there? There's going to be a lot more. You know, where was this made? Who made this? When was this delivered? And so on. How do you get that all onto a package?
Exactly.
I mean, cigarette example is going to apply to everything, isn't it? So that's the bottleneck, you know, and that is the real estate that's fixed, isn't it? If somebody can deal with that, somebody can come up with a problem.
Right. So that's essentially, I mean, one of the verticals that we would look at as well. Like, how do we help brands communicate everything that they want, be it provenance, value conscious, health conscious. I mean, they are the best guys to know what their customer archetypes are. They are the best guys to know how they want to sell the product. We are not helping them do their marketing, their brand creation for them. But they have put in all this effort. Like being from P&G, I have seen the amount of effort that used to go into making all of this material and content. And then you kind of, so P&G is great with TV, right? I mean, they created soap opera, so really, really great stuff. So imagine trying to put like 6-8 months or maybe a year's worth of content into a 30-second copy or a 25-second copy. And it's difficult. So either there is a lot left behind, which is still available, or it's just not good enough. And now we are kind of just exploding that real estate and saying, okay, you can go ahead and put whatever you want. We'll just keep making more space for you. So.
Yeah. And in theory, it's unlimited, isn't it? There's no shelf space. There's no
Absolutely.
packaging real estate that you have to work within the confines of, right? Very interesting. And okay, so thank you for the walkthrough on the product side. Let's talk about the journey. So at the top of the show, we talked about the fact that you both met at Antler. So now in March, you are coming up to like 2 months, right? Is that about right?
Yeah.
Very early stages.
Absolutely.
Is it just the two of you at the moment?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've got two. I mean, as part of co-founders, as part of the officially on the company, it's just the two of us.
Okay.
But we've got a whole lot of friends and family who's helping us.
Always helps when you're a startup. So there's the two of you. What happens next? So for those that aren't familiar with an accelerator program, how does it work from here? So you are coming up to the second half of the program now, right? Or the business end of the program. You're preparing for demo day.
So it's not yet preparing for demo day. Basically, how Antler works, and this is, I mean, I'm just kind of trying to put my opinion here or my way of the way what I see. Of course, Antler would do a better job at it. So the way it works is the first 2.5 months is when is literally the first part, and after that, the preparations for demo day begin.
Okay.
And in the first 2.5 months, they will make a decision that if they want to invest in us. Or let us know that, you know, are we even going to get some investment from them, which they can invest in us over the next 3-4 months. So we are still in that phase.
Yeah.
We haven't really reached the demo day phase yet.
Right. Okay. At what point do you start actively going out there and raising funds?
Again, this is a question which you asked me. So to personally, as a startup, last year I was working for another startup. So I've kind of learned that you never say no to raising funds. You always build that connection. You always go and have that first coffee. So we are always willing to talk to people. In terms of actively raising funds, I guess we'll be waiting for what Antler does and how we kind of progress with them. And right now we don't even know how much we really need. So at the end of the day, it comes down to how much of my soul I need to sell to be able to get that fund, and what's it coming with.
Okay. At what point do you think you'll know you're ready, and when you have a number?
I suppose a month more.
Yeah.
Probably a month.
When you come
I think let's commit here, Harsh, that a month more, and that's what we target for then. So,
right. Okay. Good. You're right. Start talking to angel investors before you need their money.
Yeah.
The biggest mistake that founders make is see that angel investors as ATMs. And they're human beings, right?
Right.
And I think if you start early, they can offer advice. And if you take on board the advice, make changes, that increases your chance of success.
Absolutely. And I think we kind of discussed this on email as well, right? I mean, I am not looking at an investor as just someone as an ATM who's going to put money. Right now, we are pretty much in zero gravity still. We just discussed so many different verticals, and we could shoot off in any of those directions as of now. And all of them pretty big in my mind, right? And all of them solvable and real problems to be solved there. We just don't know how difficult it is to solve any of those problems yet, and how long will each of those verticals take to conquer.
So is there somebody, for example, is there some skill or is there some experience base that you really would like to talk to somebody about? For example, if you were specifically targeting logistics and you didn't come from a logistics background, but you had a great solution, you would love to talk to somebody who's 15, 20 years in logistics. It may be an investor, it may be a mentor, it may be somebody who can simply open doors. Is there anybody, for example, that has a domain sector expertise or a certain hard skill that you would like to talk to at this early stage?
So hard skills, definitely. I mean, right now, I mean, this again, we've been focusing a lot on marketing and branding and basically working. So from that standpoint, I do have mentors and people that I reach out to from my P&G experience and all of that. So more of those people would definitely help, but that is an area or a network which I already have. But what we would really need as of now is the question that you mentioned. How do we kind of get people to use this? How do we get users to adopt? How do we communicate that to users and create the pull for our business as opposed to us trying to hustle and push? Yeah. So someone who's done that kind of scalable, work, someone who from early days of WhatsApp, let's say.
Right. Application side, mobile application would be a good thing.
Right. So someone who's basically had that journey, who started with pretty much nothing and had like 500 million downloads. I don't know. I mean, there's a random number there, but someone who's gone kind of looked at that and been a part of that, and what are the things to think about? those would be an interesting area for us to, get to know someone.
Yeah. You really want to get up the learning curve fast and learn from their mistakes, because educating the market can be hugely costly.
Absolutely.
So somebody who's done that,
Absolutely.
who has learned the hard way, if you like, they could have a good conversation with you.
Yes,
absolutely. And they can tell you, look, don't do this, do that, follow this path. Don't even think about that, but that's going to save you a lot of time and money, right?
Right. And personally, I mean, being a thinker, it allows me to give that respect to that person immediately, because he's been there, done that.
Yeah.
I end up having a few coffee conversations with people who haven't done that much and are basically saying, hey, you know what, you got to go do this. But how do you know it's going to work?
Yeah. There's plenty of advice out there.
Yeah, exactly.
We know that. It's more in supply than demand. Right?
Yeah, so we got to filter that out.
Okay,
and as an
fine.
early stage, I mean, that's where we struggle with.
Okay, well, we put it out there. So anybody that is listening, watching from that background, it would be great to reach out to these chaps as well.
Thank you.
Okay, and just a little bit about your sort of working relationship as well. So I think it's quite clear that you have different personalities and you come across differently and you have different strengths as well. How's that been for sort of working together? Have you found a couple of months? Maybe we can ask Harsh, because you're sort of you're more of the quieter type. So
like to get to know each other better. So we did some sort of hackathon kind of thing. Like that was totally off track what we are building right now. But we somehow managed to build it in 2 days. And Mannan was eventually able to sell it, to get to the probable customers. So that basically built confidence between both of us. Okay, so he's the proper hustler guy, I'm the hacker guy, and we'll build this thing.
Yeah. Is that within Antler you did that hackathon?
During our Antler day, initial days. So we wanted to build
What did you build?
So that one second, let me just give the backstory to that, right? So Antler allows us to do these hackathons, and basically they want team members to stress test each other.
Yeah.
So one of these hackathons happened to had 48 hours of a time frame. Of course, they don't expect people to work 24 hours, but that's the stress test I put myself on. That let me just go all out and work 48 hours. So the challenge which kind of worked out was, let's make something which could be a viable business and make revenue in 48 hours. Let's see where this goes, right? How are we going to kind of do this? And Harsh has some ideas. Of course, he can talk about the technology. But at the end of 48 hours, we got a free car wash. In my mind, that's $14.
Well done. It's more than zero.
Exactly. And that's revenue.
The distance between 0 and 1 is bigger than 1 to 1,000, right?
Exactly. So getting a free car wash is perfect in my mind.
Well done. And so in the 48 hours, did you sleep?
Oh, yes, we did. I think about 6 to 8 hours.
68 hours. There you go. There you have it. That is the life of the entrepreneur, the co-founders. It's been I've enjoyed actually speaking to you chaps as well. And I can see, and I think what I've really enjoyed is you're very early stage in the journey, but it's not like you're without the skills or the right ideas. You've got the track is set in place and you've got great support with Antler as well. And I don't know if you were lucky to find your feet and meet each other, but there seems to be quite complementary skill sets. It's, that is obviously one of the challenges. If there's too much of an overlap, it can be a bit of a friction, but it seems like you're quite clear and happy for each of you to take on certain aspects of that partnership as well.
Absolutely. And I think me and Harsh kind of discussed that in the beginning, that I literally went to set theory and mathematics, right? That if you have Venn diagrams, I literally do Venn diagrams for the both of us.
Yeah.
I am completely the hustler, right? I've got very little hacking skills. I can speak your language, but I hardly understand the tech underneath it. And Harsh is like, I can build a lot, but I don't know how to sell, right? And so my point was that let the overlap just be the vision, right? Everything else doesn't matter, because then we're going to be complementary to each other. And essentially, even when looking at potential teammates, looking at potential people to hire in the early days, that's the way I'm looking at it. I mean, I would appreciate your feedback and guidance on that as to how much of an overlap is really good. But right now, between me and Harsh, I would say the vision is pretty much the only overlap.
Yeah. Well, you've already stress tested it as well. And I think that is critical because it's all very well. And my favorite startup quote of the moment is Mike Tyson, who says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think startup life is like that. Everybody goes out with a strategy. But when the SH1T hits the fan, let's see how they really get on together, right? Let's see how they really cope. And that is the ultimate test. And if you've been through that, everything else falls apart. With the right people, strategy just comes, right? It all falls into place. And the fact you've been through these pressure cooker environments is, I think, for anybody looking outside, whether they're potential hire, partner, client, investor, that's one box checked off. Right? That's one thing de-risked, is that, okay, how are these guys going to really cope, when they run out of the enthusiasm of being startup founders, and then the reality of eating Maggi noodles hits, then all that kind of stuff. Let's see how they really are. But you've already, tested yourselves out here. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like seeing the winter times and the summer times together, right? So I kind of maybe overdid it a bit and tried to do it as early as possible and as fast as possible, because in the past I've been disappointed. So I didn't want to get disappointed again. So from my learning experiences, I was like, hey, you know what? If I'm doing this right, or I'm going back to INSEAD.
Yeah.
So
validate it.
So yes, that validation was something which was required for me.
Yeah.
So Harsh, maybe I got to apologize to you as well, but I kind of pushed both of us to have those winter times and summer times together as soon as possible, as early as possible.
Yeah, it's a good sign. If you can get to the moment of truth fast, right, that's a good sign, because easily done in the startup world is kicking the can down the road.
Absolutely.
Whether that's actually asking for money, pitching a client, or having your first sort of fallout or whatever over an idea. Just get to that quickly, get it over, and then see how you are at the other side of it, right? So far, so good. 2 months in.
Yeah.
Chaps, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
Mannan and Harsh from Absolute. I think this is the beginning, and hopefully a part 2 is due at some point, right? And I think
we'll look forward to it.
It's a journey. I think you've also been quite honest as well, which I like, because you've been very sort of straightforward with, this is where we are. We don't have all the answers. So investors don't like BS. When you try and style your way out of not knowing about a certain industry, but you're very honest and upfront and said, look, this is what we're building. We know there's a problem. We don't have the full solution yet. We don't know all these different industries, but we're here and we're asking for help. That sort of checks another box for an investor, because if you say, yeah, I know all of this, it's fine, it works, and we have a product, but I can't show you yet, all those kind of things. So good on that front. And I'm glad that you came with that sort of candor as well, because that's really appreciated and refreshing as well in the startup world.
Thank you.
I'm wishing you all the best. What is the best way for anybody watching, whether they're a potential investor, potential partner, potential hire, long term, anybody that's inspired by your story, how would you like them to reach out to you?
Well, they can just reach out to us via our website, www.justabsolute.com. Or my email address is Mannan, MANNAN @justabsolute.com, and Harsh can be reached at harsh@justabsolute.com. So HARSH.
Excellent. All the details in the show notes. Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your journey today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Graham.
Thank you, Graham.